We are a design school,
Yeah.
but we also can take projects from industry and also take research projects. So we are part of a bigger university called Indian Institute of Technology, and we have 5 different areas of specialization. One of them is industrial design,
Yeah.
visual communication, mobility and auto design, then interaction design, and animation. And there are 5 faculties for giving education in this area. At the moment, we run a master's program, and we also have a doctoral program in design. Next or a year after, we are going to start with an undergraduate program. So it's a kind of a major department within Indian Institute of Technology. Students, the program is 2 years period, and students come after they have either completed engineering, architecture, or some other design area. And the process of getting in is quite tough. You have to go through a series of examinations before you can, get into the. And we just completed 44 years now, and we're fairly well established within India now. It's a known name. The institute is made for Indian students, but we also have a separate admission program for foreigners. We do get people from many countries who come there either to do a full program for 2 years, or some of them come for a semester. So they spend a semester in IDC, take up the courses, and then they go back. So we do get people coming from other countries also. We haven't had anybody from Japan yet, but mostly they come from European countries. And you need to be a little fluent in English in order to get into the system there. So that's probably restrict entry from European side. We had people coming from Great Britain. We had people coming from Germany. Quite a lot of them come from Germany, sometimes from France. I had a student who came just for one course from Great Britain. He came for game design. This is the thing I teach. And he was there for 3 weeks. He wanted to use game as a way of handling his PhD program. So he was a doctoral student who came in. We had people coming from France also. We have actually 2 separate courses in game design. One of them is the traditional games, which include doing something on the table with a board. And the second one is the digital games. I teach the board game part of it. There are several reasons why it is so. One is games, when the traditional games are a social process, where children interact with each other, they learn from each other, and they also learn how to behave within a group. So games is a good way of training them to get into the society. Second advantage of this board game is because you're sitting together, you can form teams and try and beat the opponents. So they also learn how to win and also how to kind of be aggressive when it's required, or be, a little more, what you can say, strategic when required. So all this becomes part of the process of learning. And normally you will find that games are played by 2 or 3 different age groups. So there are some older children, there are younger children. So younger children learn from older children. There are many types of games which we do. Some are just plain fun games. We also have simulation games. For instance, currently I'm involved in developing a game for farmers in villages to teach basic banking concepts. Because now the new government wants that everybody should have a bank account. And once they have a bank account, they would be entitled to loans. So to teach that, I'm developing a game which is somewhat like a simulation game. Then we have other educational games which teach children either a working principle or a spatial thinking skill, or they are part of a classroom teaching that gets done in a school. For instance, there's a game called Mata Chibi, which is there on the YouTube, which teaches them basic arithmetics and how you can create strategies using arithmetic. There's another which is done called Fraction Empire. This teaches the whole concept of fraction, and it is far easier to learn it through game than through a formal teaching in the schools. So there are a number of games. There are games which teach creativity. There are games which teach spatial intelligence. In fact, some of them are being displayed in an exhibition by Access Gallery, which opens on 28th of this month, and it is there for about 8 days. And these games, and some of the students who designed the games will also be there, basically to tell how games can be used in interesting ways. One of my idea was to use games which has no hardware. The idea is that the poorest of the poor child should be able to play and learn. So we have a game which can actually children draw it and play it themselves. So this is mainly because we feel that schools in villages do not have adequate teachers, nor do they have adequate level of teaching. So the best way to learn would be to learn through games. So some of these games are being shown in Access Gallery. A lot of these games are displayed at the end of the course, and industries come and try and see what their interests are and try and buy these games. A lot of games were bought by Fun School in India, and they're already in the market. One of the recent game, Zero Sum, this is the game that I'm talking about, was actually licensed to Gakken in Japan, and they're producing it, and this is part of their portfolio of games. We are hoping that more and more companies will come forward to take this kind of. Interestingly, world over, people are going back from digital games to board games again. The reason is what I told you, that it's a social process that they learn. They either play within the family or with their friends, and it helps them understand how to deal with things. So board games are becoming important. Actually, we are doing different kinds of games. This is a game for children, and it deals with teaching mathematics. Okay? But the one that I told you about farmers, this is for adult game. And that game is differently designed because NGOs will use it as part of the communication process within the village. So that will be very differently designed, unlike this. This is to be played by 4 or 5 children together, and they learn it themselves. While the other game is more of a game that NGOs will play with people to make it a little more effective for them. So the games there are a range of games which have to be played differently. My current focus has been mainly on children playing on their own. An interesting part of this course is, on the last day of the course, we call all the children from our campus to come and play the games. So you get to test the games with children to know which game is more popular or likely to be more effective and things like that. So, but we also involve children in the design process. I have myself conducted game design workshops for children, school children, and believe me, they do much better game than grown-ups. That's because they're not inhibited, so they come out with very interesting ideas about how to design a game. And I found that very effective. And since then, I've been sort of getting them to come and work with our students to come out with new ideas, and that helps a lot. I also thought that games should be fun, and they should be fun, of course. And maybe part of it influences education. And I was also of the same opinion that you talked about. But when the Fraction Empire was designed, we had called very poor children, from the slums to come and play. And this was done from a 6th standard textbook. That's where the fraction is taught. A younger girl from 5th standard was just standing nearby. She watched the grown-ups playing and then decided to play. And she won the game. she was able to understand the whole idea of fraction during the process of the game itself. So now I have changed my opinion. I don't think that games are not serious education. They can be very serious education. Now, you should look at education from 2 points of view. One is, do they learn concepts? Games are a better way of learning concepts. But if you start thinking in terms of whether they are able to answer questions in exam, maybe they're not good. They may not be able to solve a problem that is given in a textbook. But understanding the whole concept of fraction. I've done a game on geography, I've done a game on many things. Their understanding is more conceptual and far superior than what happens in the classroom teaching. In fact, one of my doctoral students is now thinking of developing creativity in a group in the classroom using games and design as a part of the process. So I'm now very positive about games being used in more effective ways. Game design is a two-stage process. First is you design a gameplay, and the hardware doesn't matter there. You can even do a small paper prototype and play, and that's what children do. And that is the most difficult part of game design, to come out with a gameplay that is not only successful, not only educates, but invites repeat play from children, because they should be playing again and again. And that is the most difficult part. And it's not necessary that you need a design background for that. Anybody who is creative, including children who are creative, can come out with very good ideas about games. That's as far as gameplay is concerned. Now the gameplay like this has to be converted into a product. And that's where industrial designers are, and graphic designers have an edge, because they can come out with very interesting and nice looking products which attract children when they're put on the shelf and they want to buy it. So designers have two levels of roles. One is to design a gameplay where their creativity matters, but they also get children involved in the process. And the second stage is to design a hardware where they work independently on it, where the question of making them cheaper or costlier or all that matters. In fact, a series of students 1 year worked on very frugal games. They should be, in terms of yen, maybe 150 yens kind of expenditure. And they came out with very interesting ideas how to reduce the cost, including part of their mothers making the board for them by stitching and things like that. This is some of the ideas that they used in order to reduce the cost. The idea there was it should not be sold in the shops, but it should be sold on the road or in the train, and it should be very, very cheap. And that is possible, and we were quite successful in designing those games at such a low cost. So every year we take a different challenge. In a way, I understand that traditionally designers are in the process of making, but the new age design requires thinking designers who create interesting concepts first and then convert them into design. And it's quite likely that the concept need not be converted into a good product by the same person. You would see newer and newer design consulting offices who work only at the concept level, and then they get somebody else to design for them. So to me, this strategic design is going to be more important than to convert them into a product. So because traditional design would have a limit and beyond which they can't go. Not that they're dispensable or something, they're indispensable. Finally, you need to create a product. But basic thinking, the strategies have to come from a creative mind, and that is where the designers should shift. That's my personal goal, and I've been trying to get my students to do that and spend more time on conceptual thinking and then convert the ideas.